This recording is about one of the most practical skills you'll develop as a doctoral student. It's the skill of reading academic articles. Not every word of every article, but reading with purpose in a way that serves your research is efficient and effective. Here's something most doctoral students don't know. Scholars who download hundreds of sources don't read them all from cover to cover, and doing so wouldn't make the research better. It would make the researcher exhausted and behind schedule. What scholars do instead is read with discipline and intention, and that's what we're going to cover here. You're going to learn a three-stage process. The first stage is called orientation, and it's a structured 5-minute preview you do before you read anything. The second stage is called targeted extraction, and it's where you go to the parts of the article that answer your questions or provide the information, evidence, and support you need. The third stage is called integration, and it's a short but essential step you complete before you move on to the next source. Together, these three stages give you a system for working through large volumes of academic literature without losing track of what you've learned. Stage 1 is orientation. The goal here is to decide if the article is of use before you invest time to read it. You assess how you can use the article and which sections of the article you need to read. You want to decide if and how the article adds value. If it does appear to be useful, then you will move on to the next stage. If the article is not going to help you, then file it away and don't waste time with it. Here's how you do this. Start with the title. Read it and ask yourself, what problem or question is addressed? Most academic titles will contain information about scope, concepts, purpose, methodology, location, and other useful information. Titles will have some combination of these types of useful data points. These are all clues and help you decide if you want to look at the article in more detail. Next, read the abstract twice. The first time, read it to understand the findings. What is this article arguing? What did the author find or conclude? The second time, read it for the method. How did the author get there? Was this a qualitative study, a quantitative analysis, a theoretical synthesis, a systematic review? The method matters because it shapes how you'll use this source. During both readings, you're also looking for information about concepts, topics, and subtopics, and use of keywords. If, after reading the abstract, you're still interested in learning more about the article, go ahead and scan the section headings without reading the sections themselves. The headings give you the skeleton of the argument. You're looking at how the author organized their thinking, what they chose to address, and in what order. This takes about 30 seconds. Then read the first and last paragraphs of the introduction. The first paragraph establishes the problem or gap in the literature that motivated the study. The last paragraph states the purpose of the study, the research question, and often a preview of the findings. A lot of doctoral students spend time reading the middle of introductions, which is mostly a review of prior work. You can come back to that if you need it. Do this same scan of the summary or conclusion. Again, you can come back and read more if you need to, but for now you're still scanning. Keep in mind, these academic articles are all written and structured differently, though they do mostly follow similar conventions. So you may have to look around each article to see how it is organized to find the sections you need. Finally, look at the reference list. You're not reading every entry. You're scanning for names and sources you recognize. If you see theorists and foundational texts that appear in your own developing framework, that tells you where this article fits into the scholarly conversation. If the reference list is full of names you've never seen and none of them connect to your topic, that's also useful to know. When you scan the references, you are also making sure the article uses sufficient and appropriate sources. This lets you check the credibility of the article. You don't want to waste time with an article that has little or useless support. At the end of these 5 minutes, you make a triage decision. Every article you encounter should go into one of 4 categories. The first category is deep engagement. These are articles at the center of your research question that address your theoretical framework or that represent the most significant empirical work in your area. You'll invest time to read these. If you come across several thousand sources in your research, you might deeply engage with 50 or more. This doesn't mean you'll only use 50 sources, but you'll most likely engage deeply with 50 or so of them. The second category is partial engagement. These articles have something you need, perhaps a methodology you want to examine, a literature review section that outlines a body of work, a theoretical discussion that connects to one of your constructs. But you don't need the entire article. You'll go to the sections that help you and extract what you need. These articles will be cited in your writing and will be in your reference list. The third category is confirmation only. These articles are in your search results, they're tangentially relevant, and what you need from them is a single claim or finding you can cite. You've already gotten that from the abstract. You file them, track the citation, and move on. For example, you might need a citation for a qualitative study on a specific topic or a specific population. The fourth category is for articles that you deem useless. These articles do not merit more attention or use. File them and move on quickly. Most of the articles you encounter will fall into categories 2 and 3. Your time is limited, so approaching your academic articles in this way will save you a lot of time and energy. Stage 2 is targeted extraction. This is where you read, but you read with intention based on the triage decision you made in Stage 1. To do this well, you need to know what each section of an academic article contains. Most doctoral students were never taught this, so they read every section the same way, spending as much time on sections that don't meet their needs as they do on sections that are essential. Your time is limited, so you want to be focused, intentional, and efficient. Here's a general understanding of what the standard sections of an academic article contain. The introduction establishes the problem, identifies the gap, states the research question or purpose, and previews the structure of the article. If you need to understand why the author thought this study was worth doing, that's where you find it. The literature review synthesizes prior research to establish the theoretical and empirical context for the study. If you're mapping a body of literature yourself or looking for sources you may not have encountered, the literature review is worth reading closely. If you're verifying what position this article takes relative to other work in the field, the last few paragraphs of the literature review will usually tell you that. The methodology section describes the research design, the data sources or participants, the procedures, and the analytical approach. If you're evaluating the strength of the evidence this article offers, or if you're designing your own study and looking at how other researchers have approached similar problems, the methodology is the section you need. In the early phases of your study, reading the methodology section of studies that use a methodology similar to the approach you plan to use is very helpful. It will show you how others approached and solved for similar problems. Keep in mind that academic articles do not share as much detail about methodology as you need to in your dissertation. Grabbing other dissertations is an excellent way to see the details of how others have used and written up various methodologies. The findings or results section shows the data, the analysis, and the outcomes of the study. This section is dense and technical. If you're citing this article for a specific empirical finding, go here. If you're citing it for a theoretical argument, you can skip this section and go to the discussion instead. Similar comments here regarding dissertations having more details than regular academic articles. The discussion section is where the author interprets the findings, explains what they mean, connects them back to the literature, and articulates the contribution of the study. This is the most intellectually rich section of most articles. For most of your citation purposes, the discussion and the conclusion will tell you what the article claims and why it matters. Limitations and recommendations for future research sections are important as you start out your research plan. What others suggest may help you identify and support your gap. The conclusion summarizes the argument, restates the contribution. If you've read the abstract and the discussion, the conclusion often covers similar ground more briefly. So when you return to an article in Stage 2, you go to the sections that answer the questions that came from your triage decision. If you need the methodology, you open that section, read it, note what you need, and stop. If you need the theoretical argument, you go to the discussion. If you need a specific claim to cite, you search the article for the relevant term and go to that passage. If you're looking for gap support, you go to the section titled Recommendations for Future Research. One technique that's worth building into your reading process is reading the first and last sentence of a paragraph in a section before deciding whether to read the full paragraph. The first sentence of an academic paragraph introduces the claim or topic of that paragraph. The last sentence states the conclusion or transition. If both sentences are relevant to your purpose, read the paragraph. If neither is, move to the next one. This is another technique that helps you manage your time, be effective and efficient. Stage 3 is integration. This stage takes 5 minutes or less, and it's non-negotiable. You complete it before you put the article away, before you open the next one, and before you move on to anything else. Integration is what transforms a reading session into usable knowledge. Well, actually, this is how you convert what you read into usable data. Without it, you'll find yourself 6 months into your dissertation remembering that you read something important somewhere, but unable to locate it or reconstruct what it said. That's one of the most frustrating problems in doctoral work, and stage 3 is how you avoid it. Here's what you do. Write 2 to 4 sentences in your own words that state what this article argues and what it contributes. If you are really motivated, add the article to your bibliography. More on this later. Don't copy the abstract. Write it yourself in your own words as if you were explaining it to a colleague who asked what you just read. If you can't write those sentences, you don't yet understand the article well enough to cite it, and you know right away that you need to return to a specific section. Then note 1 to 3 connections to other sources or ideas in your working knowledge or data set. This article agrees with, contradicts, extends, or complicates something you've already read. Identify it, write it down. These connections are the raw material of your literature review, and they're much easier to record now than to reconstruct later. Then write 1 open question this article raises for your own research. It might be a methodological question, a gap the article identifies, a claim that needs further support, or a direction the article suggests that connects to your argument. 1 question is enough. The point is to stay in active conversation with the literature rather than treating each source as an isolated item. Then, highlight and grab 3 or more direct quotations from the article. Paste these into a dataset, perhaps in Excel, for example. Make sure to record the page numbers too. These will be added to other direct quotations, and you will build up a collection of directly related extracts you can use in your writing. Doing these things produces a short note and several quotations for each article. Over the course of your doctoral work, those notes and quotes become a connected body of knowledge that you built with intention rather than a pile of PDFs you downloaded and forgot. If done well, you will rarely have to go back and reread articles. To bring this together, stage 1 is orientation, and it's where you make a decision about how deeply to engage each source. Stage 2 is targeted extraction, and it's where you identify the sections of the article that serve your research purpose. Stage 3 is integration, and it's where you convert what you read into usable, connected data you can use throughout your research and for your dissertation writing. This system allows you to be intentional, effective, efficient, and to create usable data that supports all aspects of your work. Now that you know about this process, use it. It will serve you well through your dissertation and beyond.